different kind of way to tape an episode of Diabetes Connections, but we're going to give it a try. And joining me is the CEO of Dexcom, Kevin Sayer. Kevin, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Stacey. Good to talk to you again.
So normally this time of year, you'd be in Europe for EASD, excuse me.
Yes,
that conference is happening, but virtually.
It is happening virtually. It's not quite the same, but I get notes from everybody who's listening to the presentations, gathering papers to find out what went on during the day. So we're trying. Everybody's trying to do different things.
Well, I have a laundry list as usual to go through, but is Dexcom presenting anything at this conference?
We have a few papers supporting the strength of CGM in treating diabetes. Some of the results in the type 2 studies that have happened recently, and some of the results in some of the studies with the senior community and things like that. Nothing earth-shattering, but again, all supporting CGM and how well it works in helping people take care of their diabetes. So, a good show for us. But just typical.
Typical. Well, we've got a lot to cover. Just today, as we're speaking, a news release came out about a new agreement with University of Virginia. And this is for, as you're watching or listening, University of Virginia had a bit of a history with Dexcom in terms of the place where Type 0 was developed. So what is this agreement all about?
Well, and you're correct. We've had a relationship with the various teams in Charlottesville for quite some time. The Type 0 group that we actually acquired in 2018, where the algorithm for the control IQ system and the in-control study resided. We felt that was a tremendous asset for Dexcom going forward, not only in developing automated insulin delivery technology, but possibly for developing decision support tools for those who don't want an automated insulin delivery system over time. In conjunction with that acquisition, you've got also all these really smart people that still stay at the University of Virginia and do diabetes research. And they're very, access to clinical trials, clinical networks, all the other things they've done. We've had an informal relationship with them for a long time and would discuss, could you guys help us with this or that? And as our companies became more mature, it just became, as our company became more mature and they got more involved in diabetes research, we felt it was important to fund the things we were asking for and give them an opportunity to do some good work on our behalf. So over the next 5 years, we'll target some, leading edge new diabetes research project and use those brilliant minds to work on behalf of Dexcom, ultimately on behalf of our patients.
Is there anything specific that you can tell us that they're?
Well, first, we have current generation automated insulin delivery algorithms out there. We'll certainly work on next generations and ones that will just fine tune what we've already learned and do better. On top of that, I think you'll see us work for decision support, like I spoke about earlier. What tools can we offer somebody that is treating their diabetes and using insulin that are meaningful and not getting in their way all the time? So what constructive can we do there and predict? Now that we have all this data from all of our patients, because the data's been uploaded from the phone, we think the analytics capabilities of the team at UVA can certainly go through this and find a lot of things that could be helpful for us to offer to our patients. And as we look at even over time, they've developed simulators and all sorts of things and looking at diabetes data that we think could be applicable for the future with respect to working in the hospital or gestational diabetes, even the type 2 non-insulin taking patients. So now that we signed this agreement, it's up to us and the UVA team and the type 0 team to figure out and say, okay, here are the things we want to work on. And we're just excited to have the agreement in place.
That's great. For people who are hearing things like we have all the data from the phones for the first time, you and I have talked about this before, but can you talk a little bit about Dexcom's use of data? In other words, my son has used Dexcom for 7 years now, so you guys know everything about him, but you don't really know about him because it's blinded, right?
We know that they're from transmitter 1765G. Here's the glucose signals that we received. And you can look at what has gone on with your son, and we actually have data regarding how it performs as well. We come up through the app so we can service it and we can use that information to make our product better, but we don't share anything with anybody without a patient opting in and saying, I would like to share my data with X, or I would like to share my data with this other company. There's no data sharing. There's not. It's absolutely kept very confidential. We comply with all HIPAA requirements and keep things very buttoned up.
All right. Again, like I said, there's a laundry list here. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about, and this is wonderful news for veterans, that Dexcom G6 available at VA pharmacies and at no cost. It's covered by the VA.
It's covered by the VA. You know, in the past, as many of your listeners and followers know, we've been trying to move away from durable medical equipment as far as the coverage vehicle for our product. One of the things that's been one of our biggest roadblocks is getting access to this product where people can get it easily and affordably and within their normal course of their work, rather than filling out a bunch of paperwork and having a bunch of doctor notes and medical records and blood glucose logs and everything. And this coverage by the VA is going to make it accessible to veterans as long as they are on intensive insulin therapy, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, as a pharmacy benefit. So they would pick it up where they would typically pick up their drugs and at no copay. So this is a wonderful improvement for a group that really is troubled with diabetes. I think there's something like 4 times more incidence of diabetes in this group than the general population. So we really believe we can have a good impact here for this group of patients.
You know, again, I hate to ask stuff about our personal experience because it isn't applicable to everybody, but I will say when our insurance switched to pharmacy for Dexcom, it is so much easier for whatever reason than going through durable medical. I don't know if it's the billing or just they're more efficient. I am now on a new insurance and I'm back to durable medical, so I'm not too happy about that. Yeah, thanks a lot. I got spoiled for a long time. But is that the idea then, to try to switch as many people as possible and as many insurers as possible to pharmacy? And then I guess my question would be, well, why? What's in it for you guys? Why is that good?
What's in it for us is it's easier. If we are going to have this therapy be used by all insulin users and then later even type 2 non-insulin using patients, one of the keys is making it accessible and to meet patients where they are. It is not during the normal course of operations for anybody to go through the durable medical equipment process, and not only the patients, but their caregivers. You know, endocrinologists are used to working with all the paperwork associated with durable medical equipment. While it's a hassle, they understand it. Many people with diabetes using insulin don't see endocrinologists. And in fact, a good friend of my wife's, she knew from her childhood, came and stopped by and visited us not long ago. He's a year younger than me, has type 2 diabetes. He went to his doctor and he said, I'd like a Dexcom. I could do really well with that. And his doctor's an internist, general practitioner. He goes, yeah, I've heard the paperwork on that's awful. I'm not going to do it.
Wow.
And that was the answer that he got. And you know, that's not a good answer ever. So the easier we can make it on everybody in the network, then the easier it is for patients to be compliant and easier to get patients on the system. And so we pushed very hard. We have over 65% of lives in the US, covered lives in commercial insurance, can go through the pharmacy now, but not all of them do. Most insurers insist that we have dual pass, durable medical equipment and the pharmacy, but the most of our new patients and the majority of the new patients going on to Dexcom now are going through that channel. So we've made a lot of progress.
That's great. So would the advice be, as people are watching or listening, to, if you are currently durable medical, call your insurer and see if it has changed?
Or you know what, you can even call you can even call Dexcom, or you can call your insurer and see. When we get a new patient into our system, we try and determine if it's pharmacy first. We try and determine where they can go and give them the path of least resistance to get their sensors, transmitters, and everything else. So we do run a benefits check oftentimes for new patients, but not for the existing ones.
That's interesting.
They're already buying product.
Yeah. Well, I just went through all that whole process. I won't bore you with the details. We have limited time.
It's awful. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Your condolences are welcome. But it leads me, when we're talking about the VA and G6, this is a question, you know, I'm going to jump into my listeners. They have lots of questions. And one that came up, everyone, of course, is especially our listeners are so well educated. They're so up technically on everything. They're already waiting for the G7. I'm not even sure they want me to ask you about the G6 anymore. But the question that came up, and I think it applies to the VA as well, is will Medicare cover the G7, or should we anticipate issues with production and all that happened last time?
No, that, you know what, that's a very fair question. So I don't feel at all beat up by that. We got an approval on G6 much sooner than we'd planned. We knew how much better it was than G5. We were planning on launching the system in the fall and instead launched it in the spring when we weren't ready. And we literally spent a year and a half trying to catch up. We have enough capacity now to build enough G6s to handle what we need very comfortably. And the factory looks so different than it looked before. I mean, everything is literally automated. Robotic arms put every single thing together and off we go. We are building that same infrastructure with G7 long before its approval. And the equipment we bought for G6 is not going to be applicable to G7. So we're starting over. But we are getting automated lines up and running for G7 now. We have equipment scheduled to come in over the course of the year. And in all fairness, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to launch it for a group of people because we only have this much capacity. We're going to, when we go, we've got to be ready to roll the thing out. We will continue to produce G6 because there will be use cases and geographies that we won't flip to G7 immediately based upon our planning and our capacity. But we are going to, we want to be ready to flip everything immediately. That's our goal.
Right. So you're not anticipating a production issue, but in terms of, and again, I know it's complicated when you're working with CMS and when you're working with the VA. There's no reason to expect that there would be issues with those groups,
nope.
Separate from production.
We have been structuring our contracts in a manner to whereby the G6 to G7 conversion is simple. What was difficult in the past are the durable components, the transmitter and the receiver. With G7, there's no transmitter. Everything's in a sensor, so we don't have to deal with that much anymore. And yet receivers, we will continue to sell them, but it's getting much simpler. The same rules will be applicable. So we do not believe there'll be a big problem going from one sensor to the other reimbursement-wise.
Got it. All right, so let's get to these questions. And some of these guys are very technical, so now I'm putting my glasses on.
I can deal with that.
Well, I know you can. I don't know if I can. I want to get it right. Okay, so Chris wants to know, what about plans for integrating data with reporting systems their partners use? For example, I have CGM going to my pump and the Dexcom app. Tandem has released T-Connect, and the only reason that he's using the Dexcom app right now is the Clarity Goal Tracker. Any ideas about further integration with the T-Connect, especially because people are going to start using that from their phones maybe next year?
Yeah, we work with all of our partners. We would like nothing more than to have all the data flowing into our Clarity system to give patients that option. The issue we have with it is we're all still companies, and we're some companies believe this data is theirs and they need it proprietarily. It's been slow for us, quite honestly, to get data from all the other pump companies into our Clarity system. We do have agreements in place where we're working on that. We have that with Insulet. We're talking with Tandem about that now, and we're talking with other companies about it. We reciprocally are more than willing to give our data to be displayed into their app and their education systems. So we do share data with those who want it. We have APIs to whereby they can pull the data and display it if the patient gives them permission, and our criteria for accepting companies to take the data is not extremely difficult. If we view that this is something our patients want and need, we absolutely let them pull it through the APIs. I think over time you'll see us continue to share data, and hopefully others will give us theirs.
Well, and that's
it isn't simple. It isn't simple. Everybody has their own opinions.
Well, and that's another question that I've received in the past was, are the API, I may not even be using this correct verbiage here, will they remain open? Because there are lots of people who have developed secondary apps. Some are fun, some are very useful to people. And I know that there has been a lot about open source in the community.
No, our API interfaces are still, there's a process one goes through to get that information, but by and large, there's a lot, I don't have the numbers, Stacey, but I know it's certainly more than 50, could be over 100 companies who pull data from our APIs into their system. And we have kept that relatively open and shared it. Do I think it'll remain open? Yes. Will there be times when we say no? Sure. I can't really, you always say no to some things. So for example, if somebody says, I want the data in the API so I can compare you to all your competitors and say, Dexcom isn't any good, look at the other guys.
Right.
There's no sense in us giving you access to our APIs. We don't need that. We do view the data as the patients, but we also view the infrastructure we build and the money we spent as an investment we made for our shareholders. So it is a fine line to walk, and we'll continue to look at it. Ultimately, we hope to have a live API to whereby if you're running the Dexcom app and want the live data on your app, we can offer that option as well to certain partners. And that's on file with the FDA. We'd like to get that approved relatively soon. So once that's out there, we'll pick some companies and do it. But we also want it to be up to Dexcom standards. We don't want to offer data to companies that are going to make horrible looking apps and create bad experience that could tarnish our brand. So it's a balancing act.
All right, I may regret this, and I may run out of time. We'll have to see. Do you have a question? No. Do you want to say hi? My son has come in, and I'm on headphones now. So if you want to say hi for real, he's beautifully dressed for the occasion in his snug.
How you doing?
Can you say hello real quick? This is the CEO of Dexcom. You're making a wonderful impression.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. You got to ask me at least one question.
Well.
You've had the Dexcom since you were 9 years old. Really? No questions? Last longer, smaller.
Okay, what's your favorite Dexcom story that you could share with me?
My favorite Dexcom story. Ooh. I'm being put on the spot. I don't like this.
I know.
That's not a story though. Oh, my friend and I were like messing around one time, and we were horseplay, and he ripped the Dexcom off on accident, but like just the transmitter and like the patch stayed on. So like the middle of it ripped off, but the patch around it stayed on, and he freaked out, and I like pretended to like die.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for contributing.
Hey, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Your mom's actually pretty cool. My mom would have never let me grow my hair like that, so I'm gonna give your mom a break.
Get lost.
You're cool. The CEO of Dexcom said you're cool. Come on. Now you have to use that.
I think
Sorry about
You're
that.
welcome.
Yeah. I think quarantine's gotten all of us.
Yes, it has.
Oh, but I love you, sweetheart. I didn't mean it.
How dare you?
That's what happens when you have a kid who takes care of everything he's supposed to take care of. You let him wear a purple dinosaur
right.
snuggie and let his hair get crazy.
You pick your battles.
I appreciate that. It was very nice of you.
Okay.
We'll see if I don't cut any of it out. All right. Let me get back to the questions here.
All righty.
Question about compression lows. Somebody asked me if you are addressing this. I assume this won't be as much of an issue with G7, but you lean on it or you sleep on it.
We don't think that it will. That will be determined when we have more real world use than what we've had in clinical studies right now. We've got a number of thoughts and technologies we're considering for compression. I can't give away all of it, but it is something we're working on addressing over time. We have some good ideas. I don't know that you can ever eliminate it because you're going to lean on it and that's going to happen. We've looked at alternative platforms. We've looked at other technologies. We've looked at longer insertion depth, shorter insertion depth. What do all these things do? And some of the things that you think might fix it actually make it worse. So we'll look at it with G7. We are going to have an arm indication in addition to the abdomen with G7. We're running on both, and then for young children, the back of the buttocks as well. So maybe there might be less for patients on the arm. For other patients, there might be more. But we are looking at it. We do have some technology ideas that I won't give away that might be able to fix it. So give us a little while and we'll see.
I'm just curious, when you do these things, please tell me that you've got guys in the lab, like taking naps, laying on it. it's not just a robotic
No,
simulation.
we absolutely do have. We actually go lay on it for half an hour and let's see what happens. We do that particularly in our feasibility studies. Go lay on this and see what we learn.
Oh my goodness. Tim wanted to know, any plans for every minute data instead of just every 5?
I guess my question with that, and we've looked at this for years, what problem are you solving?
I'm just passing it along.
So I'm going to ask you the question I
Okay.
ask my team. So
Okay.
I'm letting your friend Tim be the guys that work with me here. What problem are you solving by reading every minute?
Well,
If you are solving a major problem, we would do that. And we've looked at that. Certainly you can possibly fine tune the algorithm better by recording data every minute or by transmitting it every minute. Are you fixing anything for the patient? If we determined that was a better experience for a patient, we would absolutely address it. But right now, our patients are comfortable with 5 minutes. We haven't gone below that. If you have an alert, you get it on a timely enough basis. And our alerts are very accurate in that time frame. And so we're comfortable with where we are. We continue to research things like that. But our market research indicates that 5 minute is absolutely fine for our patients right now.
I will devil's advocate by saying the response was from, this is not Tim's case, but another person did chime in and say for very young children, they thought it would be helpful. As someone whose child went ages 2 to 9 with no CGM, I don't have that perspective. So.
Well, no, they are highly variable, and that could be a marker where it would be very helpful. I'll note that. I learn every time we talk, Stacey.
Well, you're more than welcome to use the Facebook group as a focus group anytime you'd like. We also have people who think, we have some people, you met one of them who thinks, looking at the Dexcom only when it alerts is okay. And you have other people who have gone around the system because they don't like the 2-hour warm up. So some people can't get enough data, and some people who are 15 don't need any data. So
yeah,
there's a happy medium in there somewhere, I'm sure. I know we're going to be running out of time, but I do have to ask, the adhesive. It just seems that this year there were changes. We've talked about it before. And while for some people it is getting better, for some people it is not. I know you're working on it.
So let me walk you through that. We did change our adhesive. So let me be clear. And we've talked about this before. We had what we felt was too many sensors fall off before the 10 days were up. And if I bought a sensor and it fell off a day, I'd want it replaced. And we replaced a lot of sensors. We looked and studied a number of adhesives and arrived at the one we arrived at based on numerous studies. We'd not seen the irritation in our trials that we've seen in the field. And in all fairness, the number of sensors falling off has decreased dramatically. And there are many more sensors not falling off than there are complaints about the adhesive. So the trade-off business-wise has been good. It has not been good for those patients who have that issue. We do have on the website clinically proven alternatives and things that you can do to try and minimize that. There's, anti-allergy things you can put on your skin. There's a tape you can put on first and our tape over the top. We have studied the adhesive and the chemical composition of the adhesive at great length. We are doing some trials, just some in-house studies to try some new patches to see if that helps. We've identified literally 2 agents that may be causing this. If we take those out, do we still have the same sticking power that we do now? So we'll look at it, and if we can find a way to revise it, we will.
Okay. When we talked a couple of months ago, you were announcing CGM in hospitals. A lot of this was centered around COVID, hoping to make it safer in hospitals. There's some newer information on that. How's it going?
It has gone extremely well. We've had over 200 hospitals reach out wanting CGM, and we're in the process of getting it to all of them that eventually want to buy it. We're in over 100 now. We have now set up a registry so we can gather data from these patients. This was such, for lack of a better word, a fire drill when we started because there were so many people in the hospitals, so many people so sick that we had to get it out there. and we literally learned new things every day about, for example, the receiver really doesn't work because it's still there with the patient. They needed phones. You don't want an individual nurses or caregivers' phones. We had to give phones to the hospitals, then we had to get through the IT systems in the hospitals. Now that we have a pretty good idea how this works, we're creating a registry to whereby we can gather data on these patients. You have to consent for us to gather your data, but we want to gather data about their healthcare experience in the hospital. They came in with COVID, what drugs are they on? How are they treated? Did they leave the hospital sooner or later? We want to gather that data so we can use that to give us a basis later at some point in time to go to the FDA and say, this will be a great hospital product.
This has nothing to do with hospitals, but it just occurred to me. There are a lot of diabetes camps over the last few years that have talked about, maybe we could get every kid's Dexcom and put them on a screen in the infirmary, or, a generalized or, a place where we could look at something like that. I'm curious, I don't know, if that sounds like something that would even be possible.
That's exactly what the hospital systems would want. They would want all those CGMs going to one place. We have to use the tools that we've got. So they would put sensors on patients, we'd hang phones next to them, and if they wanted to use share follow out in the hall on iPads or computers, they could. And that was literally all we could do. We got the clarity to whereby it could accept real-time data, so we got that changed as well to make this easier. But the right answer in the hospital, one of our learnings, is we need that data to go to the place where it best impacts the workflows of the caregivers, and that would be a centralized app where you could watch numerous people at the same time.
Well, if you want a pilot camp, I could probably find several.
At some point in time, we can try that, maybe.
Hey, before I let you go, I always have to nag you about follow, because Benny is now very responsible doing most of his care. And yet, when I look at the follow app, I would love to know transmitters dying. Change this, do that. Any plans to update follow to give a little bit more?
We're rewriting follow as I speak. I don't have a release date for you, but we are going to rewrite it and put more of those same features in it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll circle back on that.
We'll circle back, and I'm sure you'll have requests on follow even when we release the new one, and that's okay. Stacey, it's very clear though, and your follow comment is perfect. This truly is becoming an experience, a consumer experience type product. What can we do to make this the most engaging for you? For you, follow would be to have all that data. And I'm confident we can create that experience at some point in time. We need to find the experience that keeps people engaged and keeps them the safest. We took a shot in the dark when we first started because nobody had ever done this before. And here's what we can get done, and here's what we'll get out. I think over the next several years, what you'll see with Dexcom is we'll create experiences that you can create more like your other apps, to whereby you can click on follow. Do you want the transmitter information? Yeah. Do you want that? No. Do you want, and literally create a menu and tiles and stuff similar to other software experiences that you have. So that's a longer term goal, and we can talk about that on another show.
Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, Kevin, you've been accessible for many years to this podcast and always answering our questions, whether they're the answers that people are hoping for or not. You're really out front in the way that not every company is, and I do appreciate that. So thank you so much for spending time with me as usual. Circle back around. We'll get Benny a haircut, and we'll talk soon.
Benny can do whatever he wants. But yeah, thanks for having us again.
You're killing me. We'll talk. That was great. Thank you.
All right.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.